Welcome to the Databricks Skill Builder series. We're glad you're here.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Eddie Edgeworth. I'm the CTO over at Koantek. We are a Databricks exclusive partner, probably one of the very few. We only do Databricks. We support Azure, AWS, and GCP. And for the past couple of years, we've grown rapidly, and we've had a lot of success as a Databricks partner. To the AEs on the call, I assume the audience for this is primarily account executives on the Databricks side. I just want to express that we have a common goal to support Databricks customers. We view ourselves as kind of an extension of the Databricks professional services, and we feel like we can allow you and support you in gaining new logos and increasing the consumption of your customers, and just increasing the overall satisfaction of the Databricks investment for customers. A couple of things that set us apart from other partners, I would say, is our accelerator framework, which is reusable IP that we deploy in many of our projects, and also our Bricks Thrive packages, which we're going to talk about today. One of which we're going to talk about today. We offer several of these packages, including jump starts, advisory engagements, what we call Lakehouse in a month, which is kind of a turnkey Lakehouse in a month for customers. We do migrations, we do data pipelines, AI, ML, including LLMs. And but my purpose today is primarily to talk about Unity Catalog and upgrading Unity Catalog via our Unity Catalog upgrade package. And just as a bit of an aside, one time in the past year, I was working with one of the Databricks AEs. And
hey, I just wanted to jump in real quick. Yeah, Eddie, just so
sure.
You know, our audience is Databricks customers that are technical looking to upgrade Unity Catalog. So we don't really have AEs or anything on the call.
Okay, super. Thank you for that feedback. Sorry, this is the first time I've joined this call. So I'll move ahead here. But just in terms of Databricks customers, we just want to express that we want to be your fiduciary. We want to help you wherever you're at in your journey, data and AI journey, and got lots of success stories, got a good track record, and we want to bring that experience to your project. And we kind of take those best practices and expertise into our reusable IP, which we call our Ascend framework. And this UC upgrade solution is a part of that framework, and we're confident that will accelerate and de-risk your project so that you can get it done correctly. This is a kind of a canonical picture of a Databricks Lakehouse, where I think everybody on the call can probably agree that Databricks Lakehouse is the modern architectural approach for data platforms. And Databricks not only coined the term, but they are best in breed. And I think with this slide kind of just expresses that Databricks is second to none in terms of fostering innovation, and which means, in my opinion, it really centers around delivering data products, trusted data as products, and where data is offered and maintained by businesses like a product and consumed by parties with permission controls and all the best practices and those types of things. So this is the type of pattern that we want to build. We want to get customers to this point of the Lakehouse. And as you can probably see from this diagram, Unity Catalog is central. It's got tentacles in all these areas, including the storage, the compute, the data lake zones, the Metastore itself, your data pipelines, and including some of the outputs of those data products, such as delta sharing and things like that. So innovation is really key, but the other half of the equation is actually delivering that value. And in both of these respects, Unity Catalog is really central. It's the heartbeat that makes everything possible in terms what is a good data and AI platform into a great one. And I think just to use a bit of a metaphor or an analogy, I don't know if the audience kind of watches the HDTV or those types of programs where they do extreme home makeovers. I think that's kind of the way that I kind of view this solution, where it's like a makeover for your Databricks environment in terms of allowing you to get more users onto the environment securely. Chances are, in a lot of cases, customers already have their data engineers and their data scientists on Databricks. maybe they're still working on getting their SQL users and the analytic workloads onto Databricks. And I think Unity Catalog enables some amazing richness in that regard. And it really unlocks the SQL warehousing component of this unified platform, and including all the things you need for a data warehouse, including discoverability, lineage, being able to implement granular security, and again, just kind of using that makeover analogy. Imagine we're like Chip and Joanna Gaines or something like that, where we're coming in, we're gonna explore your environment with you, kind of understand what your pain points are, what are your goals in terms of growth and your future state, and then we can kind of deliver a kind of a makeover for your Lakehouse environment that allows you to get there, including everything from the networking and security to the number of workspaces that you have and how those are configured and organized, to the storage, to the Metastores, to the tagging and documentation of the Metastore, and including identity federation with your identity provider, so the users and groups within the system and their access controls. And then also just the storage, the source control and the code and the branching and CI/CD that can also play a part here. So it's really all of those things all combined. And in our experience over the past year or so in working with customers and upgrading to Unity Catalog, some customers have expressed some reticence or some hesitancy in upgrading, and it's really due to a few of these reasons. I think just to kind of summarize some of the reasons that I've heard why is upgrading to Unity Catalog kind of difficult. First one is it just requires such a diverse skill set of disciplines. You need to include your data governance team if you have one, your DevOps, your sysadmins, your security, your infrastructure, and your data engineering team. Not one of those people alone isn't going to be able to perform this upgrade successfully. It really requires collaboration and teamwork. Another one is Databricks, is so good it becomes mission critical, and maybe you have ML models in production that are serving workloads and things like that, and you can't afford for those to be down at any point. So we want to maintain continuity throughout. Third one is, obviously there's the risk of failure to upgrade something correctly, which leads to errors and data anomalies and those types of things. And finally, I feel like it's kind of a one-shot opportunity where this is an opportunity to kind of right size and future-proof your environment. And in some cases, customers don't know what they don't know, and they may be fear of making the wrong decisions that might be difficult to reconcile and refactor down the road. So these are just 4 reasons that I've heard. In terms of, is this solution right for you? We've in the past year and a half, we've worked a lot with the GSC space within Databricks. So a lot of them are brand new to Databricks. They're kind of greenfield accounts. And in that case, like I mentioned, they may not know what they don't know. And so they might need some guidance in terms of what's the best way to configure Databricks going forward for Unity Catalog. And so we do a lot of these as part of our Lakehouse in a month solution. But these are kind of on the easier side of these migrations or upgrades, because there are no tables existing today. So typically, this solution is going to involve maybe more mid-tier and challenging accounts where maybe customers have been using Databricks for a few years now. They've got some tech debt over that's accrued over that time, and now they want to address that as part of this Unity Catalog upgrade, or maybe some of that tech debt is making it difficult to do the upgrades in some cases, and because of that tech debt, they've kind of held off, and they were waiting. They need some guidance on the solution. And then finally, the more challenging ones where you have the same technical debt, plus you may have some type of product blockers. There's a diminishing list of things that the Unity Catalog doesn't support, maybe up until recently, like for example, Delta Live tables. In the past, maybe if you were on Delta Live tables, you wanted to wait until that was available. So those are diminishing and getting to the point where those are all being addressed. But at the same time, maybe there are organizational conflicts or politics that need to be dealt with, or maybe there was there needs to be some type of COE level guidance as part of this as well. So those are just some of the reasons why this is important. And in terms of upgrading the Unity catalog, kind of continuing with that home makeover analogy. Every of one of these solutions for our customers is going to be a little bit unique and different. It's just like every house that gets upgraded on those TV shows is different. And so this upcoming section and during this presentation, is just going to talk in an abbreviated sense some of the discussions and the review that we would do with you, the customer, in terms of determining what it is that we need to build and what are the specifications for that for the Unity catalog upgrade. The first one being going back to that COE comment, many organizations maybe already have a central enterprise-wide data governance team and EIM program, or maybe they don't and they want to establish one. But it's important, as in a project such as this, that Unity catalog kind of falls under that guidance and that purview, if that team exists. And obviously, data governance is a subcomponent of EIM, and it's really the framework that defines the life cycle of all your data, the roles and responsibilities and the policies that are associated with all the data. And having that robust data governance framework just makes sure that your data is managed appropriately throughout its life cycle. And again, some of the requirements that we have for a Unity catalog upgrade is going to come from this framework and this team. So if one exists. Another area where we might get requirements is through regulations. Depending on your industry vertical, your organization may fall under some type of data protection guidelines and regulations, such as in the healthcare space, HIPAA. In the past, I used to work in the financial services industry, so PCI compliance was key. The point is that we need to understand those requirements so that we can kind of translate those requirements into the technical specs for the Unity catalog upgrade, and we've satisfied those requirements. And of course, the failure to comply with those kind of comes with a negative reinforcement or a penalty in terms of fines and penalties. So we want to definitely make sure that we adopt UC appropriately for those use cases. Just as a couple of examples on this, maybe how might some of these regulations translate into technical requirements? In the case of something like GDPR, which stipulates that users have to consent to their data being used, and they also have the right to be forgotten. And then maybe within 24 hours, you have the requirement that you have to delete all their data from the point that they've made that stipulated as such. And additionally, you have to make sure that data doesn't cross borders, or their border transfer data rules and things like that require safeguards to be in place. Maybe in the case of like HIPAA, we need to make sure that personally identifiable information is obscured from the majority of users, and we have an audit log of who has accessed what and when. And then thirdly, on the case of like PCI, in my past, as a developer, I was allowed to access the dev environment to develop the features for our solution, but I wasn't allowed to access prod. That was a separation of concerns that had to be done because we were under PCI compliance and doing credit card payments and things like that. So anyway, those are all examples of things that we might need to implement in terms of Unity catalog as part of this solution. Kind of including, some of the, I guess, just maybe backing up in terms of, I assume that the audience kind of understands kind of what Unity catalog does for the Databricks platform. Maybe in the past, all the things that you see here were done at a workspace level, and with Unity catalog, with the advent of Unity catalog, that's kind of gets abstracted to the account level, and so all these things can be done at Unity catalog. At the account level, which means that maybe if in an existing environment, all these things need to be kind of turned off at the workspace level in order to be enabled here, such as access controls and audit logging and the Metastore, Hive Metastore probably being most notable. And in terms of kind of just a review of the object model, with as long as the customer, if you're on AWS and you're on E2, You can have any number of dozens of workspaces in your environment. And so it's a bit of a paradigm shift to how it was in the past, where you were maybe limited to a few of these, where maybe in the terms of workspaces, you could just consider these workspaces to be a logical boundary for your line. Maybe you just want to segregate it by your dev, QA, UAT, prod, by environment. Or maybe it would make more sense to do it at a line of business level, maybe in a kind of case of like a data mesh or a data product level. You can create individual workspaces for those types of things. These are just, again, just logical boundaries that I can either grant users access to or not. And so we have a discussion about the types of workspaces that we want to create for the environment, and potentially creating additional ones as well. And in terms of the next consideration is users and personas. We want to make sure we understand who is using the Databricks environment. And ideally, we're going to do identity federation with the identity provider in your environment. Maybe it's Azure Active Directory, maybe it's Okta, or maybe it's other. But at any rate, we want to identify the groups and the users by their kind of their workload. Maybe it's by data engineers, data scientists, analysts. Maybe it's, and of course, you have multiple admin groups. But at any rate, we want to do that within the identity provider and synchronize that with Databricks. And so we have tools within our solution to kind of to support this type of work scenario as well. In addition, so once we have these workspaces, we also have the kind of the decoupling of the workspace to the storage accounts, where maybe in the past these were very tightly coupled, and I had a dev storage account that was only allowed to be accessed by dev. Nowadays, with Unity Catalog, we can support maybe in an example where production is allowed to read back into the dev environment to review the data that's in there, that type of thing. So we need to consider the storage accounts that are in use within the environment, and how those are implemented as well. This is just we go into some demos here. This is kind of just to kind of simulate the gathering of some of these requirements. This is what a canonical client has requested in terms of how they want their data lake zones to be organized. And so in this case, they want separate, isolated storage accounts, one for bronze, a dedicated S3 bucket or ADLS Gen 2 or GCS bucket. Within the silver zone, because of PHI protected information, we want to separate the classified data into a separated zone that fewer users have access to, as opposed to the general zone that's anonymized and generic data, or that everybody can see, that's generic data classification. We also have a gold zone that's kind of the same thing, that's segregated into those two sort of namespaces. And we have a separate sandbox environment where the team can ostensibly clone data from these other zones and iterate on it. Maybe they're developing AI/ML models or something like that. And over here, this transient zone is where data is being maybe landed into the environment to be ingested. So this is what, just kind of following through the examples that we're going to go through later on in this session. Just keep this in mind. This is kind of the storage accounts that the customer already has in this scenario of a Unity Catalog upgrade. And of course, in your case, we'll customize this to your needs, whatever those are. Kind of a couple other considerations before we move on. We have the concept of external locations and managed data sources. So within this Unity Catalog Metastore, we can store things in a couple of different ways. We can have it fully managed by the Unity Catalog, or we can manage it. Maybe certain data doesn't have a table created on it, and so I want to create an external location without a table on top of it, and those types of things. So we have to kind of understand what data is in the system, and then we want to start to build out that Unity Catalog Metastore. And the Metastore is the top level container of objects within Unity Catalog. It stores all your data assets within an entire region of Databricks. And these metastores can be assigned to Databricks workspaces and to control which workloads access which metastore and those types of things. And really, and then between those regions, we can use Delta sharing to share the data across them. But we need to build out this Unity Catalog Metastore, which means we need to consider this kind of three-part naming convention that exists now, where previously under the Hive Metastore we had two-part naming. Now we have this third catalog level that can be on top of it. So we need to consider how our data is going to be organized underneath that. This is just an example of how some potential ways that you can implement that three-part naming. Again, maybe it's by environment first, and then by schema, and then by table. Or maybe it's a combination of business unit and then environment, or maybe it's by team and environment, that type of thing. So in our scenario, again, just kind of going through the demo scenario here, we have a customer that wants dev, QA, UAT, and prod workspaces, Databricks workspaces, and they want the canonical bronze, silver, and gold zones. And so our Metastore, what we've kind of decided is that we want to create catalogs that kind of intersect with each of those things. So we'll have a dev bronze and a dev silver and a dev gold and a prod bronze, prod silver, and prod gold. So again, your mileage will vary, and another Unity catalog upgrades for another customer would be totally different than this. But point is that we can be flexible. And underneath that Metastore, we can configure storage, so we can actually segregate the data under these, from dev and prod, and by catalog or by schema, or by the database and that type of thing. We can segregate it in the cloud storage. So a couple of things, and then the final thing before we move on, we can also decide how we want to upgrade these tables. Maybe in your existing Hive Metastore and your existing Databricks environment, maybe you're using all your tables are managed and they're on DBFS on the Databricks file system. Otherwise, maybe others are in another scenario, all your tables are external tables, and they're in another storage account and that type of thing. So what we can do is kind of map out where the tables are in Hive Metastore and where they're going to end up in Unity Catalog, and in terms of those metastores. And this is just kind of some high-level guidance about the different pros and cons for managed versus external. At a very, I'll just say, at a high level, I mean, the recommendation is to move to managed tables, because that's where all the latest and greatest performance enhancements offered by Databricks is going to happen first. And so unless there are specific reasons why you justify an external table, which we can go over, we would recommend managed. That said, for these table upgrades, it's quite a bit easier if you're already using external tables to upgrade them to external tables within Unity Catalog, because it's a simple metadata operation. All we're doing is adding a catalog to your existing, and you can create these two definitions that point against the same storage, and so it's a seamless upgrade as well. So you can upgrade the table name. You can reference it via the old Hive Metastore approach, and you can reference it via the new Unity Catalog approach. And then that gives you time, or buys you time, to be able to upgrade all of your ETL code, your data pipeline code, your views, your dashboards, anything that references that data using the new convention. And as soon as everything is pointed to Unity Catalog, you can deprecate the Hive Metastore reference and be done with it. Again, that works for external tables. There are additional approaches that require other approaches. If we're going to move to managed tables in any respect, we're going to need to do some type of a create table as select, or we're going to need to do a deep clone of the table in order to create a new version of it to move it over. And the very last thing before we move on to the next session, we start talking about our solution in depth here, is access controls. Once we've got these tables in Unity Catalog Metastore, we can apply access controls to them at any of those three levels within the three-part naming. And of course, this is where those identity provider synchronization groups would come in very handy. If those exist, we can apply it to that level so that we're not doing very granular security by user, which would be very expensive and messy. So moving on, so here we're going to deep dive into our actual upgrade solution. This has been submitted as a brick builder solution a couple of weeks ago, so we haven't heard back yet, but just wanted to make clear that we anticipate and hope that this will be a brick builder solution sometime in the future. Really, the benefits over doing this type of upgrade by yourself is that we've kind of taken all the best practices that we've learned over doing these upgrades for the past couple of years, and tried to automate as much as we can, and to at least build tool sets and utilities that enable us to do this more predictably and more reliably. And that starts with doing an automated discovery of your current state environment, which we'll talk about more in a minute. But we can also kind of, as we advise you and as we kind of go over those requirements as we discussed, we can track those and create notebooks and outputs in terms of diagrams and so forth that kind of represent the requirements for what we're going to do. We can reverse engineer those requirements into our Terraform inputs. We want to deploy everything that we do in these upgrades as part of infrastructure as code. And so this gets deployed repeatably. It can be done in one region, and then we can do it in a completely different region using the same code. And then once we get to the point where we're actually applying these changes to your environment, we can do that via Terraform, as I mentioned. And then the final, and we can do that fully seamlessly without breaking continuity of your existing pipelines and those types of things, making sure that everything is still working. We can get to that point in the upgrade. And then 5 and 6 here is where we start to talk about table upgrades. And as I mentioned, if it's a simple sync command, an external to external type upgrade, that can be done very seamlessly in the terms of a managed table upgrade, or where the source table is maybe created against a mount point or DBFS or some other reason why we can't do a sync on it. Currently, we have some approaches that I'll talk about here in a minute. So again, I just kind of summarized our 4-phase approach here, where we start with kind of discovery, where we kind of come in and we explore your environment with you. We understand, we try to learn about your requirements, and then we kind of collect those requirements and we configure your Databricks environment using Terraform, and we actually deploy those changes and get your Unity catalog to a place where it's ready, although the Metastore will be empty at that point, but nothing's broken or nothing's been stopped working. And then steps 3 and 4 is where we actually do the table upgrades. And what I plan to demo here is really these steps 3 and 4. So I'll talk about those more in a minute. But yeah, just to kind of drill into that a little bit more, the way that this works for our phase 1, we basically just give you access to a Databricks repo in your environment that connects to some of these tools that I've discussed. And the first one being an automated discovery assessment notebook that we run against your environment. It utilizes REST API calls and so forth to reverse engineer the current state. So we gather information about your Hive Metastore, your cloud infrastructure, your storage, your security. And more importantly, we create we export a table list of all your Hive Metastore tables that we can use as a mapping document for how we plan to disposition each of those tables and how we plan to upgrade them. So we'll kind of digest that for a little bit, and then we will have one or more of these advisory sessions with you, the customer, where we'll kind of go over some of those slides that I just went over, plus many more, where we can kind of talk in depth about each of those decisions. The workspaces, the storage, how we're going to organize the Metastore, how we're going to do the identity provider synchronization and federation, and those types of things. And then we kind of circle back. We do another planning session where we capture all those changes in a 2B state diagram, and we create 2B state diagrams that kind of represent the requirements for the upgrade, and then we use that as inputs for our Terraform variables. And then as we go from there, we as I mentioned, we use Terraform. It's very modular. And because every one of these solutions is a little bit different, we have to customize it a little bit to make it work for your environment. But that's done quickly because all the building blocks are there. And then we're able to apply the Terraform, which makes the physical environment changes to your environment, and including creating your Metastore, creating any new workspaces and networking and storage accounts, and establishing your identity federation with your identity provider. And so we start to create that security at this point, although the Unity Catalog Metastore is empty. And as I mentioned, nothing has changed right now. Everything that was working under Hive Metastore is still working. And then finally, or thirdly, we go into the actual table migration, where we use that upgrade discovery notebook that we had exported previously, and we basically fill it out, where we kind of create the mappings of how we want to upgrade everything, and then we import that back into Databricks, and we review that notebook with you, kind of review the plan. And then we go through a process where it automatically creates some control tables for us that manage that upgrade, creates some workflows, a scheduling workflow for each object, and we have some monitoring dashboards in Databricks SQL that allow us to kind of oversee this process. And at this point, it can kind of run unattended in phase 4. It runs on schedule. It upgrades these tables as they were scheduled to do. We can monitor the status if things fail or whatever. This is still a very hands-on project. We have data engineers on the project where they're going to intervene and address these things. And the point being in this case that we're upgrading these tables, and we're also coordinating the upgrading of your ETL pipelines and any code that touches those tables, so that we can cut over to the Metastore or the Unity Catalog Metastore. So all that said, I think I've shown enough slides for the time being. I'm going to switch over to just a couple of things to show as part of demo, underscore what we're talking about here. Firstly, I just wanted to quickly show the account console, and kind of using that example that I mentioned earlier here. It's very simple to set up user provisioning from your identity provider within this environment. In this case, we've got a number of workspaces in a number of regions, and we're going to focus for the purpose of this demo on this West US 2. So you can see I've got 4 or 5 of these workspaces that are in that region, and so I create a Metastore, which in this case, this is the Metastore that was created. It's got a default location where data will be written unless it's overridden by other things. And then I can associate workspaces with this Metastore. And that's what I've done here, where I've got my dev environment. I've got an equivalent prod environment. Both of them are using that same Metastore. I've got a couple other, this is maybe another data product where I've got a dev and a prod. And then I've got a separate L&D environment where team members are doing training and things like that. So that's the kind of the account level. The Metastore, I've showed you kind of the workspaces, the Metastores, and then once we've synchronized with the identity provider, we can create users and groups and synchronize those with the provider and organize those into users and groups. As I mentioned, within the very first thing we do is we give you access to our Unity Catalog upgrade repo. And this is just really, it contains a number of individual tools that we can use to upgrade and to support the upgrade. And in this case, I'm showing you this initial upgrade assessment tool. This is kind of a Databricks notebook version of some of the slides we've been going over, plus a lot more, where we'll kind of go over some of the planning and kind of the understanding the concepts and understanding, how coupling this with the discovery that was done. And then once we have that information and we've circled back and we met with you, we can create solution diagrams based on that information down here at the bottom. These are auto-generated based on the feedback that we recorded during these sessions. So we can say in this case, so we want to have 2 workspaces in West US 2 with a shared Metastore. And then we want a east to west single workspace, and we've got one in APJ here with 2 workspaces and another Metastore. And we plan to share data across them using Delta sharing. Or in another scenario, we show how the workspaces and the storage are related, where in this case, this prod environment has access to multiple prod storage buckets. In the case of dev has access to its own dev storage buckets, and prod is allowed to access these dev storage buckets as well. So that's how we kind of planned it out to be. And as I mentioned, we would then enforce that using the Terraform. We would deploy that via the Terraform. And then once the Terraform is applied, that creates everything that, based on our specification. Just kind of quickly, for those who haven't yet upgraded to Unity Catalog at any rate, this is basically what your environment is going to look like. It requires you to have a running cluster or a SQL endpoint to be able to see what's in the Hive Metastore here. Once you've upgraded to Unity Catalog, even if you haven't migrated your tables yet, you'll see kind of Hive Metastore is integrated with the rest of your your catalog. And these catalogs were created as part of our process. As I mentioned, we wanted to create a dev bronze, a dev silver, a dev gold, and we've done that. Up until, just for the purpose of this, we went ahead and did this upgrade in advance. But what the process being that, as I mentioned, we export an Excel document essentially of all the existing tables in your Hive Metastore, and we work with you to kind of map those to where they're going to end up in Unity Catalog. So in this case, I have a table here called this account incremental. It's a managed table. It's built on DBFS, which means that I can't do that sync approach. So I said I want to make this a managed table in Delta, and I'm going to specify this is the catalog that I wanted in. I want it to go into Dev Bronze. This is the schema name I want it to go into, and this is the table name that I want it to go into. And then additionally, as kind of shown up here, I can, if I want it to be an external table, I can provide the location of where that location would exist. And this can either be done as a one-time upgrade, if need be, or in the case of, again, if you have data pipelines that are still referencing the Hive Metastore, you're going to want to keep this synchronized in perpetuity until those ETL pipelines have been updated. And so what we offer is the ability to sync this on a schedule. This can be synced as frequently as every minute or so forth, but it basically uses change data feed on a Delta table to keep track of the incremental changes and apply that to the upgraded table until everything is done. So again, we kind of do that mapping, and then we import that in here, and it creates a bunch of these jobs. As you can see, some of these are failing. Most of these are due to quota issues within our environment, so you can disregard it. But in the case of some of these tables, for each one of those tables that was in my list, we've got a process that our data engineers now can kind of monitor and manage, where this is going to, again, run on a schedule to keep this table synchronized, so the Unity Catalog managed version of this table synchronized with the Hive Metastore version of it. And so I won't go into all the code here, but the code's here. This is auto-generated code that works, and as we do that, we have a unique Databricks SQL dashboard that allows us to kind of monitor everything that's going on in the environment, in terms of how things are progressing, and we can monitor the progress. And then finally, we have a separate tool for managing the permissions on each object as well. So and we'll continue to build on this as we go forward. But so hopefully that makes sense. That's kind of our process here. And as I mentioned, I think I talked through all these things here, so I won't go through these again. But just to kind of revisit the process here for the table upgrades, we basically are collecting information about the Hive Metastore. We're collecting information about the where we're going to upgrade this table to, and we have that control table that I was just showing you. This kind of just is some details, but as I mentioned, there's a little bit of a Cartesian product of if a Hive Metastore table exists as an external table, I can upgrade that to an external table using sync, as I mentioned. Otherwise, if that's not the case, and of course, you can also do a dry run of all those tables. And if any of them fail for whatever reason, maybe those external tables are built on a mount point. And before we can upgrade those tables, we then need to create new external locations in Unity Catalog, and then create new Hive Metastores or new Hive versions of those tables that don't use the DBFS reference to be able to upgrade them using sync. So anyway, you can go external to external, manage to manage, manage to external, or external to managed, and depending on what your needs are. And then, as I mentioned, we basically are using a sync utility in the case of external to external. Otherwise, we have a change data feed approach where we can specify a schedule on which those tables are upgraded. And we've got a set of monitoring tables that I showed you, are based on the dashboards are based on these tables. So as things progress with your upgrade, we can monitor this table and kind of keep an eye on things. So so all that said, I think that I'll leave a little bit of time here towards the end if there are any questions. But I think this is kind of an overview of again our solution. We've got multiple tools. I showed you our table upgrade tool. We've also got tools that support, as I mentioned, full Terraform configuration, auto discovery of your environment, managing all of your users and groups, and identity federation, to name a few others. And we'll continue to build this out to facilitate these upgrades as we continue to get experience with them. So all that said, are there any questions or anything that I can answer with the time that we have left? I don't know if I have any, I don't know if I designated anybody officially as the QA person for this. So, hopefully somebody's keep an eye on the questions on the Q&A. But if there are no questions, then I think that's all I had for this, unless there are any other questions I can answer. So. All right. If there are no questions or anything, then let's see. All right, so I got a question here. You talk about how you manage migration of UC of pre-existing continuous streaming pipelines, especially those up on DLT. That's a great question, Jen. So what I wanted to kind of, I just stopped sharing my screen, but I just wanted to show that in a case of streaming, that's a scenario where we might need to what I would suggest we do is maybe not use that CDF approach that I was describing. We would create a side-by-side pipeline of your existing pipeline but I did want to share just the documentation and the Databricks Databricks website of kind of the what is Unity Catalog page here, where down here there's as I mentioned, a diminishing list of limitations. Up until about last month, I would say, Delta Live Tables wasn't supported on Unity Catalog, so that was a bit of a non-starter. So we would just say, we'll keep those running under Hive Metastore until the time comes that we're ready to upgrade them, and that time is now. That it is supported now. I guess that's in preview still, but it is possible. And as you can see in here, there is a structured streaming support. So the first thing we would do, Jen, is to make sure that the table is, or your streaming pipeline doesn't have any of these limitations. And if they do, then we'll wait. Otherwise, we would, like I mentioned, if it needs to be synchronized any more frequently than a minute, which often a structured streaming job is, we would, in that case, create a side-by-side version of your pipeline and then cut over to it. That would be my recommended approach. I'm sure we have others as well on our team. So I think if that is
awesome. This was really helpful. Thanks for coming today to share with us. Is there any other questions from our attendees? Feel free to raise your hand and you can ask your question out loud and I'll unmute you. All right, well, it looks like we're good.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present, and hope this was beneficial. And hope you all have a good day.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.